Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. My name is Dale Tomlinson. I'm a part of the customer success team here at Thrive Mental Wellbeing, and I'll be one of your co-hosts today, alongside the lovely Katrina, who I'll have introduce herself immediately. Katrina.
Thank you, Dale. Lovely to be part of the team today and such a important topic to discuss. My name is Katrina Thomas. I'm a business psychologist, and I work with Thrive with the mental health training and webinars. So lovely to see you all today.
Brilliant. Thanks for being with us today, Katrina.
You're
Absolutely,
welcome.
really important topic today, and one I've noted that we've been quite proactive on this year. I think in the past we have delivered these kind of sessions, but we've often done them in like January, later December, where actually we're already in the midst of winter and the impact it can have on our well-being. So a really timely session today as the clocks go back in a couple of weeks and we're starting to prepare to hunker down for winter, so we can be proactive and ready to manage our mental health in the winter months. So as I said, yeah, a really important topic, and we're really pleased to have so many of you with us to talk about it today.
Absolutely. We're going to go into a poll to start off, aren't we? Straight in, aren't we, Dale? Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes, that's correct. If you can go to the next slide, please, Katrina.
Sure.
So for those who aren't familiar with Slido or haven't used it before, it's really, really easy. All you need to do is scan that QR code in the top left corner with your phone or a tablet if you've got a QR reader. Or you can go to the Slido website and use that code. And the question we are opening today's session with is, do you feel that your mental health and mood is affected by seasonal changes, especially in the winter months?
So at the moment, it's a strong yes. And I think there's been so much, especially in the UK, well, down where I am, down south, we've had some really strange weather going on at the moment. And we never feel like we get a good summer. It tends to just give us the fluctuations, doesn't it? So we've been having really a lot of rain, a lot of darkness, and then sunniness within the same day, which has been quite a difficult thing to manage sometimes.
Yeah, you never know what to wear. Never know how prepared you have to be for the weather. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I've noticed as well over the last couple of weeks, I mean, I'm sure we've all noticed that we all have eyes, but what was still sort of a lingering later evening in the sunshine suddenly now is, by about 6 o'clock, we feel like we're in darkness now. In fact, I was lucky enough to see the passing comet yesterday. In the sunset,
Really?
yes, but it was an early. It made me think, oh, the sunsets are quite early now because it was around
Mm,
6-ish time.
mm.
And so, yeah, we're certainly having some odd weather in terms of the amount of volume of rain and changeability, but also those nights drawing in definitely as well.
Does it affect you at all, Dale?
It does actually, yeah, it does affect me.
Mhm.
I find my mood changes. Yeah, I mean seasonally anyway. From sort of, especially in the summertime, I'm generally much more upbeat.
Mm.
Generally much more. I don't know. I'm more social at that time of year, where I'm out with
Yeah.
friends and family more, and perhaps the combination of the good weather making allowances for us to do some of those things we'd like to do, certainly helps. But I do find in the winter, in the run up to winter, my mood is affected. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me it's it does depend. I think towards maybe January, February, I get the most affected, I think.
Mhm.
But the start of autumn is kind of like it's actually quite a nice feeling for me in terms of the autumnal colors, the changes. It's still quite warm. It's definitely warm today, which is very strange because it's quite dark. But I get that kind of it's a nice warm feeling and how everyone's celebrating. But I think towards like January, February, I've had just
Mhm.
about enough of like the grey weather. And
Yeah, I get that.
yeah,
I
because they still get quite a lot you can get some, quite nice weather like October, November time, even though it's getting darker, you can still get
absolutely.
that nice kind of feel. And then you've got um, you know, November the 5th, you've got things to look forward to, but there's not much going on January, February, kind
No.
of early March stages there. So I think I get affected round about those stages.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I love autumn. It's probably my favorite time
Yes.
of year in terms of just, I mean, I'm lucky enough to live in rural North Yorkshire, which you may say
Oh,
that about during the
wow.
presentation when my internet performs like a rural North Yorkshire internet. But yeah, I do love the way this time of year looks. But it turns so fast. It only feels like a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago the kids were on summer holidays, and then suddenly we're looking at the sun being down by 6 o'clock, and yeah, it does change rapidly.
Yeah, I think what really helps for me is that I try and go somewhere sunny in these times because I know if I don't, it's really going to have a long-term impact. So I need to kind of shake it up a little bit as well. I'm lucky enough I didn't do it last year, but I've saved money to do it this year, thank goodness. So let's have a look at these polls. Wow, 89% say that they do feel their mood is affected by the seasonal changes of winter. It'd be great to get some comments as well in the chat if that's possible, just how it affects you and whether it might be a positive or negative. So it'll be interesting to see how the impact is for the changes. Right, thanks so much. Shall we move on, Dale?
Absolutely.
Great. So just looking at the statistics of seasonal changes, this has been shared with me, and it's just about giving you more of an awareness and understanding how people, the population, global population, is affected by seasonal affective disorder and SAD in smaller terms, if it's abbreviated. So it kind of, if we have a look at the stats globally, it ranges from about 0.5 to around about 6%. So it does depend on the region, of course it does. If we have a look in areas of the US, you have 1% of people in Florida experiencing SAD, and that's obviously because of the region, compared to 9% in Alaska as well. So you have a lot of people in Canada experiencing something called winter blues, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But usually it's about 2.6% of the population experiencing SAD. And again, in the UK, we have 2% of the population experiencing seasonal affective disorder, while 20% experiencing winter blues. Now, the reason why I'm saying winter blues and SAD is because the winter blues, it actually happens, it's not as severe as seasonal affective disorder, and it happens on occasions. But SAD is a major depression with the seasonal patterns. So I don't know whether anyone was aware of that. Where people say winter blues, it is different to seasonal affective disorder in terms of the fact that SAD is a major depression, and the winter blues, it happens occasionally. It does really get you down, but it doesn't have that official diagnosis, which SAD actually does.
Mm-hmm.
But again, looking at these statistics again, we say about the milder symptoms. There's also the work-related absenteeism peaks in winter, of course, where people with SAD really do get hugely affected, and they can actually, it can affect the productivity at work. It can affect the way that you interact with your colleagues. It can affect the way that your concentration is, but we will look at that slightly later on. Now, what is seasonal affective disorder, I hear you ask? Now, it is a form of major depression, and it is a diagnosed condition. It means that you get the symptoms every time, at the same time, around every year, usually around that autumn-winter stage, and that's why it's known as winter depression. So if your sleep patterns are affected, your appetite, your mood, if that changes every year, usually in the winter months, it may indicate that you have seasonal affective disorder. Again, you want to communicate with your doctor if you can, talk to people around you to see if it's a difference between that winter blues and actual SAD, the seasonal affective disorder. But most people start to get the symptoms for the first time in their 20s and their 30s. But children can be affected too. Women are about 4 times more likely to have sad symptoms than men. And some people have sad symptoms in the spring and summer months instead, which is different, it's unique, but it's something that if you are feeling like that, then you know, do some more research and understand how you're reacting to things. And it is a less common trait. Now, if you have low mood over autumn or winter, it's really advisable for you to then research what's happening, understand, check in with yourself, start to listen to your body, start to listen to the way that you're interacting with people and within yourself as well. And I do recommend you take yourself to the GP. They can recommend several treatments that you can try to help ease those symptoms. Whilst the exact cause remains unknown, some suggest that there are certain hormone triggers or the attitude-related changes over the certain types of years. For example, the natural reduction in daylight can have a huge impact on the production of serotonin, the neurotransmitter that plays a crucial part in our mood, our appetite, the way in which we have our appetite regulation, melatonin that's involved with our circadian rhythms, so our sleep and awake regulations, and what makes us sleepy. These hormones can be increased by the reduce of natural daylight as well. So regardless of this being considered as seasonal, it's important to take these signs seriously, as with other types of depression, because in some circumstances it can actually get worse. And I'm going to ask you some questions as well, Dale. I know that you went to Sweden, you spent a lot of time in Sweden, and of course the fluctuation between the winter and summer months are huge, aren't they? They're absolutely massive. And I know that you're going to share with us now about how that impacted you in terms of seasonal affective disorder.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, thank you for introducing that. For those who do know me well, know that I talked their ear off about my time in Sweden. So I lived in Sweden for about 2.5 years. At the time where a lot of my friends had gone off to uni, I hadn't decided what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I went and did some studies and did some volunteer work in Scandinavia. In particular, I spent a bit of time in Stockholm, but for the most part, I was actually kind of north of where this circle is drawn, living in a city called Luleå and spending quite a bit of time in another city called Kiruna, which are both. Luleå is about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of the Arctic Circle, and Kiruna is north of the Arctic Circle. And so, wonderful places, beautiful places, as you can imagine, in the summer, never-ending sunshine for a little while, and you'd find yourself on the streets at 11 o'clock in bright sunshine, wondering, is my phone clock broken or something? Is my watch stopped? How is it this bright? And yeah, I really love my time there. I love the work I did as a part of that period of my life. But as you say, yeah, it's a place of extremes. And in the summer, I said you wouldn't believe it, but we had 30-degree sunshine all day. A really wonderful part of the year, although challenge with its own challenges of circadian rhythm being all over the place, relying on blackout blinds to be able to get to bed at night because it was still so bright. The birds were still singing, there was still activity around. But then in the winter, actually having kind of the opposite experience. And I think actually on the next slide, there might even be some pictures of what that experience looks like.
Sure. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. Where, yeah, absolutely, it felt like a never-ending.
Can you see that okay? Yeah. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yes. So on the left, you've got the ocean at Luleå, which was frozen hard enough in that cold winter that cars would drive over it. You could get your ice skates on or your hit sleds and go out onto the ice, and having to put a lot of trust in those engineers who were telling us it was thick enough. Some really ice cold days. I think -30 was one of the coldest days I experienced. I did get a -38 once, and we were kind of banned from going outside by the police because it was so cold that your eyelids were freezing shut and the air in your lungs could start to freeze. And yeah, there's a trip up to the as I passed the Arctic Circle there. But what's really unique about that first picture with the sunshine is that that was about as high as the sun got in the sky.
Mm.
That was the dead of winter, and we maybe had that for around an hour and a half before the sun descended again, and we were back in darkness. I think on the next slide there's a couple more pictures as well. But what was really yeah, so
Wow.
husky sledding and visiting some of the locals. Both of those pictures taken on the same day. One was taken at about the one on the right was taken at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The one on the left was taken at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so as you
Really is dark the whole time.
but
One
yeah,
o'clock in
yeah,
the afternoon. That's incredible.
absolutely, yeah. And in the midst of winter, that is about as light as it got up in Katrina. And it did have a really severe effect on my mental health and my well-being. As much as I loved kind of, growing up in England, especially on the coast, we don't get a lot of snow. We get a lot of wind and a lot of reasons not to leave the house. Whereas as a kid, you want to go out in the snow and it's there. And so while it was kind of beautiful in that wonderful winter landscape, um, I did suffer quite significantly with winter blues, seasonal affective disorder, somewhere in between. And while I do experience milder symptoms in the UK of it, as I've learned more about it, during my time in living in the north of Sweden with, continual darkness, um, severe cold weather, it did have a really strong impact on my mental health. And now I've learned a lot more about mental health over the years and during my time at Thrive, recognizing that actually some of the symptoms I had were likely depressive symptoms, where I was experiencing very low mood, prevalence of intrusive thoughts, um, the absolutely low energy, lethargy, like just I could not resist the idea of eating carbs constantly. I was just stuffing my face. Like it was just, as almost like a coping mechanism, as almost like a get some joy out of this day with some food because there's just nothing for me outside. It was so cold and uh
I
and
guess it's where that serotonin comes in, isn't it? Where you have the pleasure of eating the food and just feeling
absolutely.
the warmth and feeling good about that.
100%, absolutely. And on top of that, a lack of social time. I love at that age, and I still try now, but my body's falling apart on me. I did used to love playing football and getting out and being sporty and social, and I couldn't go for a run because the roads were so icy, and the cold would hurt my chest, and I wasn't used to it. I didn't have a strong social network there of friends, and so I became quite insulated, and isolated into myself. And yeah, it was a difficult combination of kind of losing access to things that would help me manage my well-being normally, and also the impact of the environment around me.
Mm. And those low levels of vitamin D, isn't it? That really doesn't like it's associated with depression. If you're, as it shows on the slides,
Mhm.
there is no intake of vitamin D through those winter months. So you really must have felt that heaviness and and,
Absolutely.
and just that feeling of being lethargic and yeah, it must have been really difficult. So how did you manage it, especially being, with a not a huge social network, so you didn't have that emotional kind of support. How did you manage things, Dale?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I was lucky that I did have a group of friends, not a huge group, but
Mm.
I'd been able to build up a group of friends. And as you mentioned, like in Alaska, where we see rates of around 9%, the north of Sweden is quite similar. It's around 9-10% of people are affected in this way.
Yeah.
And so as a result, people are a lot more aware of it in that part of the world than perhaps we are, where it's not as common. Um, and therefore I was able to get support. My friends were bringing me vitamin D supplementation, saying, "Look, we all take this at this time of year."
They're
Um,
all aware of it. They're all very clued up into what they need to do to prevent, mitigate those risks.
Absolutely, yeah. We got daylight lamps for the rooms, and
Right.
I even had this alarm clock which kind of simulated a sunrise, so that it felt because one of the things I could not drag myself out of bed. I just for love nor money, I could not drag myself out of bed, which again is part of that circadian rhythm disruption and also a symptom of depression as well. But that sincerely helped. And sort of, yeah, taking the Scandinavian approach to socializing at that time of year was really impactful as well. There's a saying which is on the screen. In Swedish, it's det finns inget dåligt väder, bara dåliga kläder, which means there's no such
You
thing
can
as
say it better than me, Dale.
which means there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. And that's obviously,
Fantastic.
if you live in that part of the world, that's the approach you have to have. Otherwise, inevitably, winter becomes a write-off for you, and you're not going to have
Mm,
access to, getting to work will be a pain, socializing will be a pain, travel will just be something you wouldn't even entertain the idea of. However, if we can flip that narrative almost in, it's almost applying some CBT style principles in terms of challenging that negative and replacing it with the positive, that actually if we can invest in certain things that can help us get around these challenges, like regular supplementation of vitamin D, like getting access to what, as soon as the light is out, for that hour or two of sunlight you might get in the day, the streets would be heaving. They'd be really busy. They'd put like the pub garden heaters that you get. They would be
yes.
outside of all the cafes, and if it was -20 outside, people would be outside eating and having their coffee or fika or whatever it was,
Wow.
because the sun's out and therefore we need to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So that was a
Absolutely.
really big thing that people did. As much as you can, be out in the daylight. Be adaptations. If it's really really cold, everyone there has big expensive coats. It's like investing in a car, I guess, for them, in that they're able to actually still be on foot. And so having the right clothing, footwear, investing in that so that actually being outside at that time of year isn't a burden,
Mm.
taking the opportunity to be in that sunlight wherever possible. And I did eventually learn cross country skiing to make the most of sport at that time of
Incredibly
year.
difficult, isn't it? That's a really
Very hard,
hard one
yeah.
to do.
Yeah, the delayed onset muscle soreness after the first few sessions of that, I was in a permanent squat for about a week. But absolutely, yeah, it's all about adaptation there. It's all about a switch in attitude of being
Mm.
able to recognize what can I do in this situation. Yeah, supplementation, adapting the kind of exercise you would do, adapting the way that you socialize and the times that you do it. And as a result, it's perhaps why the rates aren't even higher in that part of the year because of those behaviors.
Yeah, fantastic. And it really does, it kind of opens your mind out, especially with the getting out in the morning sun in particularly, important to kickstart your circadian rhythm. I think that is absolutely crucial. It's almost
100%.
like for us, it's like going to the gym, almost get yourself started for that day, get yourself prepared. But yeah, just making the most of it. What about the what are they called? The lamps?
Um,
Did
Beg your pardon.
were they effective or
I found it useful personally. I
okay?
personally did find it useful. I think it has mixed results depending on the individual, but for me, I did find the daylight lamps useful because otherwise, well, for me, using it as the kind of alarm in the morning was a natural prompt. I know about, I've
Yeah,
heard in various sleep webinars that we've run, for example, the impact of being able to get sunlight in your eyes in the morning to start that wake up
absolutely.
process.
Yeah,
And without that, yeah, I was certainly dragging myself out of bed every day. And with the sort of the more natural light, sunlights internally, it would help. Yeah, certainly helped me in my mood.
I could definitely understand the how that alarm clock will work, the warming of that feel, almost not warming, but the feel of the warmth, the sun,
Absolutely.
and that very slow kind of rising naturally.
Especially because internal lights can often be quite harsh, especially nowadays.
They can.
We kind of switched the way that our bulbs work, I guess, and the light is a bit less natural, a bit more harsh. And
Yeah,
so it felt like the light was either really artificial and not helpful,
yeah.
or it was dark. And actually, those daylight lamps, and it was actually like a nice, happy medium to remind me of what the sun was like. Which, yeah, certainly did help the mood. And it certainly helped if I was sat doing studies, for example, that it wasn't just looking at the window and it being black outside and it being sort of harsh light inside. It felt like a happy medium. So it did certainly help me.
Thanks, Dale. And just one more question. Sorry, I feel like I'm chewing your ear off now. Um, the mannerisms of the people. And I know you said about CBT, and I know you said about, how everyone makes the most of it, but that genuinely or generally and genuinely must be something that really does help you cope and it helps your resilience. And was that something that you brought along with you, coming back to the UK?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was quite an eye-opener for me living up there and experiencing it, knowing that, people experience it back home, and I'd had mild versions of it in the past. It sort of made me realize the importance of social connection and community, regardless of the time of year, but especially in the winter. It has changed my behaviors going forward, I have to say. I think as a kid growing up in the winter, unless I was like playing football and running around and warming myself up, I tended to stay inside. Whereas with my kids, they've got like full body
You're
insulated
out there.
overalls, and I'm like, get outside, it's good for you. It certainly does help. It helps me be more deliberate in my actions, especially as a home worker. We're all
Mhm.
remote here at Thrive, and so naturally, if I wasn't deliberate about my actions at this time of year, I could go a whole day, with the most outside of work, the most interesting conversation being about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with my 6-year-old or
What's
something
wrong
like
with that? That's a fantastic
don't
conversation.
get me wrong. When I grow up, I want to be Leonardo. However, what I have noticed since that experience is that as I'm more deliberate in this time of year, and especially
Yeah,
careful with the remote worker, that getting outside, getting that
yeah.
sunlight, and talking to people. I've got a dog, which is the greatest natural form of exercise of walking my dog, without having to think I'm exercising, and just speaking with people on the way. Um, it certainly has helped me, and that's certainly a behavior I've always intended to intended to continue as a result.
Fantastic. And I just wonder as well, just adding on to that, and as you're talking, I'm kind of reflecting and looking at some of the chats, some of the comments. Thanks everyone for sharing. Looking at the way in which perhaps the impact of those neurodivergent people, in terms of the weather. And I know that obviously with seasonal affective disorder, it's a type of depression, and so it can actually impact people's energy, their motivation. I'm sure people with ADHD have severely impacted by the symptoms. People with autism. Someone's written in the chat as well. People, I think they have a son with bipolar disorder who is hugely impacted by the winter months. So it does show, and I suppose having that positive framework, or rather the way in which you are more resilient because you've been in this situation, perhaps, taking on the more energetic, getting yourself out, wrapping up warm, just pushing yourself a little bit may make a difference. But it is interesting to see how it might impact those neurodivergent people in these particular seasonal months.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think for myself as well, one thing I did really experience was difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing. And if you
yeah,
have a neurodivergent disorder which impacts
yeah.
your ability to focus on tasks as well, it's surely gonna exacerbate that even more. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just remember there is a research that does suggest that because of the sensory overload, those with autism, they do get hugely impacted by the change in the seasons because of that sensory overload, because of those, big changes in the temperature, the light. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing to then perhaps something we should research and look at a little bit further for additional webinars. Right. Okay. Let's move on. I think yes. How do you take care of yourself? Moving from Dale's coping mechanisms and discussing, the just uh, ideas around people with neurodivergent who are neurodivergent as well. It's really interesting to now get your thoughts on how do you take care of yourself. It's a word cloud, so just you can pop in as many thoughts as possible. Obviously, we
There's
have.
been some great comments in the chat as well already.
Yeah, there are. They're wonderful. Yeah, sorry taking you away from that chat by asking you so many questions, Dale. But yes, thank you everyone for. I think someone's saying here, getting out. The most recent one, getting out and taking part in something you like outdoors, and being amongst nature really helps. It really does. Yeah. Being in a volunteer cleanup group since September 21. Fantastic. That's great. Thank you for sharing, which they discovered when also going through depression. So getting yourself involved with things that you really care about. Yoga is excellent as well. Thank you so much, that person. Oh, we're getting lots of lots of feedback here. That's brilliant. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, of course, we're all human, aren't we? We have healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms. So, but trying to stay on that healthier side is a long-term positive effects. When of course, with the unhealthy, you're more likely to get that immediate gratification from that glass of wine or glühwein, I suppose, mulled wine, as it gets a little bit colder. But yes, these are wonderful, great ideas. Meditation, training, vitamin D, socializing. A lot of you, as it gets, as more people say the same thing, the words get bigger. So a lot of you saying regular exercise, going for walks, self-care, listening. Yeah, brilliant. I tend to, when I'm walking in the autumnal months, I really like listening to, I don't know whether I'm going to pronounce it right, but Ludovico and Analdi, I think it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so good. So good. Really nice. To just take myself and it's just a very peaceful, self-caring routine that I do for myself. Walking the dog, yep, someone's with me on that one. Someone's noted reading, listening to podcasts. Thank you so much. Yeah, podcasts are really good. They get yourself into that framework, don't they? It's almost like a CBT.
I think it's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
that conversational nature. It feels like, and
yeah.
when you listen to a podcast, sometimes you are like, oh, how would I respond to that? And you almost lend some social time out of that podcast sometimes. So I enjoy that for that kind of reason as well.
Yeah, it really is that kind of immediate reflection, isn't it?
Mhm.
Reiki, lovely. Hot drinks, always. What else do we have? Socializing as much as possible. Yeah. And it's getting people to come out with you. Come on, let's go for a walk. Come on, let's do this.
Absolutely.
So finding your tribe that like the winter walks is really important. Keeping hydrated, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, supplements, diet. Diet is incredibly, I don't know why it took me so long to say that, incredibly important. Making sure that you're getting a balanced diet and you're not filling up with those carbs or overeating, because that can be something that you can do to then get that serotonin update intake, and that feels good.
I noticed the sauna has been mentioned as well. That was a staple. That my roommate was from the north of Finland, and so he taught me not only about sauna, but he taught me about having to then jump into like an ice cold bath afterwards and whip yourselves with branches and all. I didn't really enjoy the self-flagellation with branches, but the sauna, absolutely, yeah.
We down here I'm in Dorset, and the saunas are starting to appear on the beaches now. I
Nice.
kick myself because I think that's such a great business plan. But even
Absolutely.
if I've missed a boat on that one, just being able to go into the sauna and then run into the sea, absolute game changer.
Yeah,
Absolute game
absolutely.
changer. But I'm not sure about any branches. I think
No,
it's a
yeah,
bit more
I
reserved
wasn't
down
too
here in
fond of that.
Dorset.
No, I wasn't too fond of the whipping yourself with branches. I wonder if he made it up just as a prank. This is a Finnish custom, and we just hit ourselves. And enjoyed watching me do that.
Let's
But
see if he'll do it.
yeah. But absolutely, it's kind of like that looking forward to getting into something warm, having been out in the cold. If the cold's not avoidable, I mean, as much as there's pros and cons of sort of the rise of smart technology. I was out at my mother-in-law's at the weekend, and she was really pleased. She just had a new smart meter installed, and she was pleased that from her phone she could make sure the house was warm when she got home. That she didn't have to
Yeah,
get into a cold house, turn the heating up, wait for the fire to get going. And actually, we have got great adaptations to the winter now.
we do. We do. it just would be nice if the energy bills could come down a little bit
Yes,
to help us
absolutely.
with that, wouldn't it?
That would help all of our winter well-being.
Yeah, I think so,
We
Dale.
petition.
Thanks everyone for giving just sharing your ideas. And please do take some if you haven't thought about it. Have a look at these and maybe take some from other people. I think that's a great example of healthy ways to address the winter months. So let's just move on to the next slide. Oops, sorry. Hang on. Great. So it's kind of a reflection on what we've kind of discussed today, just now, about how you manage the winter months. There are huge amounts, and obviously you are unique. You know, your different stress thresholds, your different ways in which you react to the winter months, the cold, the darkness. Of course, again, if you already have a mental health issue, it's about being aware of that, isn't it? And about mitigating the risks and about taking those really important steps and communicating with people as well. I know it's not been put down on here, but communication is absolutely key. Communicate to people around you how you're feeling. Share with people about whether you are going to feel a little bit low and why that is, so people are aware and they can actually check in on you if you don't feel like coming out, or if you don't feel like going out for a walk, or if you have started to kind of isolate. Then knowing that you have that social group around you is incredibly important. Also, communicate with your GP as well. Don't feel like it's something that is that people are going to judge you because of that, and it's not going against who you are. It just means that at this particular time you're unique and you may well struggle. So share that with people, help people to understand. But there's some points here that may have been included in the word cloud beforehand. You have the relaxation and mindfulness, really, really great ways of bringing yourself back into kind of a homeostasis pattern where you can manage where you feel slightly depressed. It can really help. Those deep belly breathing can release a lot of good hormones in your body and can make you feel like you can start the day again on a level plane. Light therapy, Dale, you've already given us huge amounts of knowledge on the light therapy, what did and didn't work for you. But it's about experimenting as well. It's about choosing things that might or might not work for you. Cognitive behavioral therapy is about looking at your thoughts, changing your thoughts to enable to change your behavior. Now, the cognitive behavioral therapy is fantastic in terms of looking at winter months and how your perspective might change, and also how you can then challenge those thoughts. But there is other therapies as well, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a third wave of cognitive behavioral therapy. And rather than challenging your thoughts, it brings into kind of the Eastern and Western sense of it, or sense of looking at an issue. And it allows you to just have the intrusive thoughts, knowing that they're there, but not buying into them. So rather than challenging them, you're accepting them and you're finding a different way of how to manage that. So if you are curious about cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, then yeah, do some research on that, because they are fantastic. Talking therapy, again, it's linked to CBT as well. It's a type of talking therapy. There are others as well. You have the humanistic approach. You have the client-centered approach. Someone's just written here, thank you. CBT is fantastic. Absolutely agree. And acceptance and behavioral therapy. My son did really well with both of these. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for feeding that back. That's wonderful to hear. And I hope he still benefits from it now. It's an ongoing thing, but for me, I through my master's, I studied acceptance and commitment therapy, and I became a practitioner. And I can absolutely wholeheartedly say it really did change my life and changing the way in which I view things. Sometimes it's difficult, but again, I'm coming from a non-judgmental place, so it does fluctuate. Supplement and improve nutrition. I think everyone's noted that beforehand. Making sure you get your vitamin D, making sure that you're eating the right kind of food to create natural vitamin D as well. Plan sleep hygiene activities. Plan sleep is incredibly important. Making sure that you are keeping yourself refreshed, good showers, keeping yourself, upbeat in that sense. You feel good once you've had a long sleep. And perhaps, maybe doing someone's put mindfulness as well in the chat. Thank you so much. The mindfulness is a really great way in terms of the relaxation and mindfulness approaches. You can start looking at taking some guided meditation, which could well be the equivalent of going into that very deep relaxation state. So even if you don't get the actual sleep where you are in, the REM or deep sleep stages, that guided meditation can take you to those relaxation places, and you can start benefiting from that. So you can do that, or breathing exercises, something to just engage and regulate the nervous system, so that you are from a place of relaxation and you're from a place of calm, and you feel that you've taken that space to then concentrate on yourself. Body scan meditation, is if you can't fall asleep, is the best. Someone's noted that. That's brilliant. Body scan meditation is about going through from toe to head, or rather head to toe, whichever way, and breathing through each different part of your body. So you are consciously relaxing each part of your body until you can finally drift off to sleep. And if you do that enough times, it really does help, and you can get to sleep quite quickly, and your brain starts, your mind starts to train itself to get to those places a lot quicker. I've used guided meditation in the past, where it's a kind of sleep hypnosis. Fantastic. Really difficult to do at the beginning, but as I carried on, it really did. It worked very, very quickly. So I think they're absolutely brilliant, brilliant suggestions, and thank you for those people that have offered their experiences in the chat as well. Plan social time and activity adaptation. Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that you have time to go out. Manage addictions and alcohol consumptions. Of course, we're all human. There are healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms, isn't there? And sometimes, aren't there even, sorry. And sometimes we do tend to go to that immediate gratification because the way in which we feel immediately after, rather than if we take some time and look at the long beneficial effects. So yeah, and exercise. Right, so moving on, what is good mental health? Dale, what do you think good mental health is?
Yes, it's an interesting question, and one we don't think about a lot. I think we've gotten really good at describing what bad mental health looks like, or what mental ill health looks like. And actually, if you ask someone what a good mental health looks like, it can be quite, I don't know. As a webinar recently with a client, as an in-person sort of seminar, actually, so webinar is not right. And we kind of started talking about what is mental health, and a lot of people kind of see it as this hard to grasp, ethereal thing, and actually, it's something that we can measure. It is something that we can measure, and because we wouldn't know what bad mental health was or suboptimal mental health was if we didn't know what good was. And so for me, I think it's really well described with what's on the screen now. It's that position where, cognitively you feel healthy, where you're not feeling that your mood state or emotions are getting in the way of, the tasks that you want to accomplish. And that, you're in a position where all systems are working as you would hope they would. Absolutely, yeah. For me, that's what I would consider to be good mental health for me.
Absolutely. And also mental health is a continuum, isn't it? it fluctuates through the different types of
Absolutely.
things that happen through our lives. We're not going to stay in one place all the time. And also, those who have a mental illness diagnosis, it doesn't necessarily mean you have poor mental health. You could be managing really well, and vice versa. Those people who don't have a mental illness diagnosis can actually go through really tough times in their life and experience temporarily poor mental health. So it's about, you know, just being just being um, kind to yourself, and understanding there are those complexities. It's not always going to be just that straight one set way. Right, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, promoting good health. Well, we've kind of gone through this already, but just to give you a different view on a slide, you know, exercise, rest, socialize, meditation, and mindfulness, spend times outside as much as possible. Because if you don't have the positives in terms of your mental health, there is a high chance, especially with neurodiversity, it impacts you so much these winter months, and the way in which it changes and the way in which it affects your whole mood. It can lead to quite dangerous or even high risk situations. And one of those situations is obviously the suicide rates. And it's really interesting to know that the seasonal differences in suicide rates, such as the peak at spring, this is really interesting for me, because you usually think that it might well be in December or it might well be in November, but it's actually the suicide, actually the peak rates are in spring. And that's for men and female. Females are slightly earlier. And I was talking to a great friend of mine, Kev, from another company, and he is absolutely brilliant with suicide rates. And he does a lot around the research. And it's just interesting to understand that around those springtime is because of that long period of the darkness, and the way in which it affects people, and that you just get to that end and it just becomes too much for some people to manage, sadly. Those are the possible explanation, kind of the seasonal changes as well, but it's also the social and economic risk factors, as well as the biological impact of changes in season, such as the length and also the temperature. So just make sure that you are checking in, be aware of yourself, your own personal coping mechanisms, and also those around you. Really, really important. So we're going to move on to next, how Thrive can help. So Dale, this is all down to you now. Please
Pressure's
share
on.
with us how Thrive can help in terms of seasonal affective disorder, and just supporting those people that are struggling at this particular time.
Absolutely, yeah, and Thrive is a resource which can really help. I imagine many of you here will have access to the Thrive app as a part of your employment, or via another mechanism. And for those who aren't, please do get in touch. The Thrive service was developed by clinicians, a consultant psychiatrist, and consultant clinical and forensic psychologist, with the hope of helping people manage mental health, to detect conditions early in their development, and to allow individuals to build personal resilience or recover from mental health conditions that they might be experiencing. Now, we've been through those symptoms of seasonal affective disorder and the winter blues. And as you may have noticed as we were talking, there is a connection between those symptoms and depression. A lot of them are very similar symptoms you might experience within the context of depression. And the Thrive service has been designed with depression and anxiety in mind. Those are the two core things we want to tackle, as well as stress, as well as low resilience, burnout, and other mental health issues. The core focus of everything we've built into this service is around helping individuals manage anxiety and depression. We've built this with safety in mind. We are a clinical service. We are a mental health service. And we happen to use technology as our means of distribution because it means that we can get to lots more people really quickly. We are in line with the NHS's DTAC criteria. We are a registered medical device with the UK government, and anonymity and confidentiality is key to what we do. We will never ask you personal identifiable information within our service. as a part of your user profile to ensure that your data is safe and secure. And in fact, we give you ownership of your data within the Thrive service. Absolutely, as I mentioned, what we are all about is screening and intervening. We screen because that gives us the evidence we need to identify a condition, and we are an evidence-based organization. Everything we do is underpinned by clinical evidence. And we use those clinical screenings to get the evidence of what conditions or symptoms you might be experiencing, so that we can identify those mental health conditions, and we can empower help seeking in a variety of different ways, including content within the app service, including signposting to therapy services where appropriate, or for certain organizations who have their therapy provision with Thrive as well, being able to access a therapist quickly so we can help individuals recover and grow.
I just want to pause, if you don't mind, to make a comment. Firstly, there's someone that's noted in here. She said, fantastic service. How lucky are we at L'Oreal to have this? So that's a wonderful nod to Thrive. Congratulations. But also, I think that it's wonderful to have this, the way in which the app works, where you have your daily check-ins. And it's a really simple, you just do it. It takes a couple of minutes, well, not even a couple of minutes, I'd say sometimes seconds. How am I feeling today? It's very visual as well, but it paints the picture of exactly how you're feeling. And then if you are struggling, that triage service that immediately gets contacted is incredible, because sometimes when people are struggling and they go to the GP to help, you're put on a waiting list, and that's really, really difficult, isn't it? And that can encourage you not to then take the steps forward to be able to help, or at least you're then completely almost a feeling of isolation, or at least for me, when I was struggling before, that feeling of isolation where you are waiting for someone to actually come and give you some help, to at least acknowledge how you're feeling, taking what you feel seriously, taking that seriously. And I think this is a fantastic way of doing that. You have that immediate reaction. You have those different things in the app that really help you to recover and help you to grow. And if needs be, you have the ongoing counseling support as well. It really is fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. That daily checkup feature for me, I kind of like to think of it as, an indispensable part of my self-care routine, in that I wouldn't neglect brushing my teeth twice a day because I want good dental hygiene. I don't want to live with the effects of poor dental hygiene. And so I take a couple of minutes in the morning and the evening to brush my teeth. It's not a particularly onerous task. It's fairly easy to do. It's very cheap to do, generally, unless you're buying some posh, I don't know, toothpaste extracted from some in the Himalayas or something. And it works, right? And it works. We know
It
that if we
really
brush our teeth,
does.
we generally recognize that we don't get cavities. And in the same way, just that 2-minute daily checkup, it doesn't even have to be every day. It could be a couple of times a week. Literally takes a couple of minutes. If you can create that, make it a part of your non-negotiables, like brushing your teeth, as I am going to do this because it's a part of my health, because mental health is just, it's like cardiovascular health or gastrointestinal health. It's just health.
And
And
I think we give so much away of ourselves to our jobs, to our family, to our other people. We forget to check in. And this is a great way to just say, have you checked in with yourself? Are you okay? How are you feeling?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Let's go on to the next
Yeah,
slide.
absolutely. Yeah, so as mentioned, we are, laser focused on mental health. We're not a more generic well-being service, although we do have the name well-being in our name. We are laser focused on mental health and on helping individuals get access to the right type of treatment, helping individuals access the right type of care routine, and helping individuals catch these issues early. And that's one of the reasons why doing this session today is so important. So that actually you can start getting into this habit of checking in on your mental health in the run up to winter, so that we can actually, when you get there, you can recognize those changes and intervene early. What we don't want, which we know happens, what we don't want is someone getting to a stage where their mental health is in a really severe place, where they're feeling really unable to cope. and having their health severely affected by this condition. If we can do anything to get in there early, then we feel we are doing what we have set out to do here as an organization. Slide, please. There we go. And so, as Katrina said, we do have for some of our clients, we have access to our triage, chat, and therapy service. If someone screens positive for anxiety or depression in those screenings, namely the GAD-7 and PHQ-9, which are for anxiety and depression, then they will get a proactive outreach from a therapist. This happens within 10 minutes of that positive screening. They'll be speaking with a fully qualified therapist here at Thrive. We'll triage that individual, understand the risk, complexity, severity of the case. We might ask some questions, relating to seasonal affective disorder, relating to the environment that you're in and how it's affecting you, so that we can get you into the right stream of support. For those milder cases, it may be that actually an assigned therapist as a coach can support you. For those perhaps more mild, moderate, severe cases, you can have access to uncapped talking therapy in line with your needs, so that we can get you to being well again.
Wonderful.
And on top of all that, we also have all the software that we've been building for the last 12 years here at Thrive. We create a bespoke user journey within the app, so that rather than it being a more generic content library where you'll go into the app and just kind of work out what works for you, we create a more bespoke user journey based on your needs. So when you've completed those screenings, when you have a screening result and understand what those symptoms you're experiencing may be, we can then suggest sessions within the app that are going to best help you manage those symptoms. And so if you were to go through a Thrive screening and screen positive for the symptoms of depression, perhaps influenced by seasonal affective disorder, then you'll have a journey through the Thrive app, which is focused on treating those symptoms and getting you to a point of recovery. The goals that we'll set for you within the app come from usually from three different pools of sessions, if you will. The first usually is some kind of intervention or for immediate physical symptoms or psychological symptoms that you're experiencing. And so an example of this is if you were experiencing high stress, feelings of panic or anxiety, perhaps we'll actually take you through learning the precepts of calm breathing and how to use that resource as a sympathetic nervous system management tool to get you out of those fight or flight situations that you might find yourself in, the panic, stress, anxiety inducing situations that you find yourself in. So you've got a real tangible sticking plaster, if you will, for that particular issue that you're experiencing. And so these interventions are all about, in the moment, how can I manage this issue? On top of that, we usually suggest an individual engages with our computerized cognitive behavioral therapy program. There's a huge amount of research into CBT as probably one of the gold standard treatments for depression. I've read multiple and we've studied multiple meta-analyses of the research on computerized CBT, and we know that if you engage with it, that it can be just as effective as in-person CBT as well. And so we've created this computerized cognitive behavioral therapy course, which you can see an example of playing on the screen, where we'll take you through certain situations. We'll have you go through certain role plays as you try to understand your perceptions and core beliefs, understand how you would react to certain situations, how it influences your thought patterns and therefore your emotional and behavioral response to certain situations. As Katrina rightly said earlier, CBT is also a leading treatment for seasonal affective disorder. And so being able to access some CBT immediately within software, you could complete it at 3 o'clock at night if you really felt the need to, with no waiting list attached to it, is a really, really powerful tool for us to have in the Thrive service. The CBT course we have has a range of modules and sessions which you can interact with. They're short sessions. We're not going to have you sit down for an hour in front of your computer. There's a bite-sized CBT sessions where you can over time engage with them, repeat, practice those principles, that you can challenge those negative thoughts at source. And lastly, we have our lifestyle coaching and habit building resources. These are about identifying risks. These are identifying vulnerabilities. These are about identifying issues, perhaps in your day-to-day life, that are affecting your mental health, that could predict a mental health condition in the future, or actually are exacerbating one. And so, again, in the example of seasonal affective disorder, if you're experiencing poor sleep, in the
Mm.
Thrive app, we can help you build a sleep hygiene routine where we can help coach you on what to do in the run up to bed, what the half-life of caffeine might be, and how it might be affecting your sleep, how alcohol or other stimulants might be affecting your sleep, and give you the opportunity to take control of some of these behaviors that may be impacting your well-being.
It really is important. Having the control really does impact your mental well-being, doesn't it, in the perception?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so all of this content and more is available in the Thrive app. If you do have access to it and haven't yet downloaded it, please do. If you're not sure if you have access, you can reach out. And I think Ella has popped an email in the chat, so you can find out if you do have access and what that access code would be. Sign up's really simple. We don't ask for your name, date of birth, address, anything like that. All we need is an email address, a password of your choice, and that access code that will be attached to your organization. And hopefully, yeah, using Thrive from now going forward into winter can help you manage any of those potential winter blues or seasonal affective disorder symptoms.
Fantastic. Well, we've come to the end of this webinar. Thank you all for your wonderful comments. Sorry, we've missed some as we've been going along, but the recording will be ready for you. It will be sent out to you by the wonderful Ella. And from me, thank you so much for attending today. Really did appreciate your comments and your feedback. Dale?
Yeah, brilliant interactions today. Kept us on our toes in a really good way. So thank you so much, everyone, for the great interactions in the polls, the questions, the thoughts. It's really helped it be a really wonderful session today.
Yeah. And take care, everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take care, everyone. Take care of your mental health. Bye bye.
Bye.